Okay, you got one grant. Now what's next? I bet you're excited and probably a little bit nervous about obtaining your first grant opportunity, and that's to be expected. But one thing I can tell you is this isn't the last step, it's just the first. Hi, I'm Ashley Adams with Lotus Nine, where we help grassroots and new nonprofits better position themselves to obtain foundation grant funding. And in today's video titled, You Got One Grant, Now Get Another, we're going to discuss 3 ways to turn that first grant opportunity into a series of opportunities for your nonprofit. We're going to discuss number 1, why you shouldn't rely only on one funder, how to line up your next grant funding opportunity, and finally, how to leverage your current grant opportunity to get more support for your organization. So, I want to share a story. I attended the grantee orientation for a large community foundation a while ago. And the point of the orientation was just that to get the new organizations who were receiving funding kind of trained, oriented to what the foundation would expect from them. Specifically, they discussed who their program officers would be and the reporting requirements for this foundation. I'm sharing this story because there were 2 people that I sat next to at a table whose reaction to the reporting requirements kind of baffled me. The first gentleman, you can tell his organization was relatively new. He was new to the grant funding process when the foundation brought up about reporting requirements. This guy got super pissed, and I thought I missed something. So as I'm hearing him speak to other people at the table, it sounds like he got upset because he felt like, why should I have to report anything at all? Now, mind you, he was new to grant funding, but my thing is, if someone gives you money, if a funder gives you money for your nonprofit, why wouldn't you think you had to report on it? There was a second person at the table I was at. This young lady, she was pissed as well. I've never seen so many upset people about receiving money, but anyhow, she was upset because her exact words were, I don't have time to do reporting. So again, I'm thinking, why did you guys accept this money? Because in the announcement, there was some language regarding reporting. And to be fair, the foundation just brought up that there will be some reporting and they hadn't decided on the frequency. But they also showed the paperwork that each nonprofit will have to use to do their reporting. It was roughly maybe 5 to 7 questions, very basic. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, whatever you said you would do in your proposal, that's what they want you to report out on. So what's the problem? My point in sharing this is that you should always look for the positives. As a new nonprofit, I understand you're under a lot of stress to make sure everything stays afloat. You're probably operating with less staff than you want or no staff. There are a lot of things that goes with operating a nonprofit. So I understand you could be under a lot of stress, but always look for the positives. If I were in that position, what I would have looked at as, okay, I got this money. This is the perfect opportunity for me and the nonprofit that I'm working with to learn how to do grant reporting. If you're new, and I think for the gentleman, this was his first official grant that he had to report out on, this is the perfect opportunity to, don't make mistakes on purpose, but it was a small enough award amount that if a few mistakes were made along the way, you have program officers that are assigned to your project and organization. That's who you make contact with. They represent the foundation and they're there to assist you. So, like I said, look at this as a positive. And this is a way for you kind of learn your strengths, your weaknesses with grant reporting on a smaller level. So when you get to a larger level, like state, county, city, state, and federal grants, which you're definitely going to have to do reporting on, you kind of know a little bit of what you're doing. And then for the young lady who said she didn't have time, that made me question, well, if you don't have time to do reporting, is it just you operating your operating the nonprofit? And if so, that's a problem. But I'm assuming it wasn't. I think she just didn't feel like reporting was necessary. A piece of advice from me to you. I always look at grant funding as in the scenario of borrowing and loaning money. When you receive a grant from a funder, they're giving you money, although they don't expect you to pay the money back. What they do expect is a return on their investment in your nonprofit. So, with that being said, they're expecting impact. If they give you money to fund your project, they want to see change in your community. Think about it. You, as an individual, if you loan someone money, generally you kind of want to know what it's for. You may not need to know the specifics, but the average person will ask, especially if it's a pretty large amount, well, what do you need the money for? The same scenario, you have the same scenario with the grant funders. They want to know what the money is for. They want to know how you're going to spend it. They want to see the impact. If I'm loaning you money to pay your rent, first I'm going to ask, what is the money for? Probably if your rent is in arrears, how far? And it just leads to a bunch of questions. So just in general, keep in mind, look at applying and obtaining grant funding as if you were getting money or loaning money to someone you know. You're going to ask some questions, you're going to expect a return, and then on a personal level, you expect your money back. On the scenario with grant funding, the funder wants a return on their investment. In other words, impact from your program. So that's my little 2 cents on that. So let's get into the points of today's video. The first point is, don't over rely on one funder. Even if that funder is amazing, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket because you never know what the future holds for that funder. Who's to say that their funder may not change their priorities in the next couple of years? The perfect example of this is when COVID-19 hit, and a lot of nonprofits were negatively affected for a variety of reasons. There were a lot of funders who pulled back on some of their more established priorities to put more money into COVID-19 related projects, emergency funding. So, not saying COVID-19 will happen again, but another major issue or occurrence could happen in the world to where a funder may feel the need to take money from one that's set aside for one priority and utilize it for another priority. Another reason is, just like nonprofits have budgets, funders have budgets as well. They get in a certain amount of money roughly every year. Based on that, how much they get, that's how they determine what they're going to do with the money. It goes to say, if they receive less money that particular budget year, they have less money to give out. So you never know. They may have to tighten the reins on their budget a little bit, and your program may be affected. So don't rely on one funder. Make sure you have other funders, either that you're getting money from or you're in the process of establishing a relationship with. So if things change with one funder, you can always approach another funder to kind of help fill that gap. Also, and this kind of falls on you as a nonprofit and the program that you're providing, what if you don't hit all the goals that you set out or proposed in your proposal? This is a real thing, and it can happen for a variety of reasons due to your fault or no fault of your own. So in the event you don't meet your program goals, there's a possibility that your funders may decide not to continue your funding for that current funding cycle, which I don't see that happening a lot where money is getting pulled, but it can happen. Or they may choose not to fund you in the next funding cycle. That's realistic. Things happen. So always be prepared for the worst and expect the best. So moving on to point 2. Think ahead and line up other funding sources. Just like in the examples I just provided you, you never know, anything can happen, and you never want to rely solely on one funder. And they don't want you to rely on them as the sole funder of your project, because in the event their funding disappears, lessens, or something happens to it, they don't want your project to end. And it's not just about you as a nonprofit, It's the work that you're doing in the community. And if your community needs your project or program, they want to make sure that it continues on whether or not they're involved. So, with that being said, your current project or program shouldn't only just think about the problems of today. They also need you as a nonprofit executive director, founder, or leader also need to look to the future because when you solve one problem, you kind of create other problems. So I know that sounds kind of weird. So let's say, for example, as a nonprofit, most need funding. Okay, let's say you get $1 million grant. That solves your funding problem, but now it creates a new problem that you have to figure out how to manage your grant funds. So that's what I mean. When you get one thing settled on one end or solve one problem, you generally create another problem on the other end that you have to address. So with that being said, always be thinking about the next project or program or expanding your current projects or programs because the community and your clients' needs are ever changing and you never know what can happen next. You always want to make sure that you're in a good position to address those needs as they arise. So with that being said, here are a few tips. Here are a few tips that can help you stay prepared in the event that something happens. Always keep a running list of potential funders that you can approach and make sure you're in some stage of the process of approaching these funders. So you definitely should be doing your grant research, identifying funders whose priorities align with your mission of your program. And then once you identify them, make sure you're researching, make sure you're looking for ways to connect with them, whether it's in person, by phone, via email, etc. So you can kind of start those initial stages of building a relationship. So once a relationship is established and you actually approach them for funding, they have some background knowledge of your program. So in addition, like I kind of mentioned in that tip, you should always be doing grant research. New funding comes up periodically. You just always want to make sure that you're on top of it. And when something comes up, that you're ready to execute and reach out to that potential funder. Okay, let's go to point 3. Use your current grant funding to leverage other funding opportunities. And you might not understand what I mean by that. Foundations and funders love momentum. Once you get your first grant, that's your momentum to keep going. That first grant is proof that your organization can deliver results, and you take that and run with it. By that I mean, when you're applying for new grant opportunities, I would say 90% of the time, most funders ask, what other funding are you receiving? That could be foundation grants, local grants, donations, whatever. What are you doing to bring more money into your organization? A lot of nonprofits that I work with really don't like answering that question, and they feel that the only reason why the funder is asking is because they want to see what they already have, so the funder can adjust what they may potentially give to that nonprofit, and that's not the case. Like I mentioned before, foundations or any funder, they don't want to be the sole funder for your project. They want to spread that out because they don't want the sole responsibility of making sure that your program lives past their funding. So when you get asked the question, what other funding income do you have? Answer it. And if you don't have any other funding streams, make sure that you can share with them who you're researching or looking into. Again, this just shows that you're not only relying on them for funding. And if you put that information in there, make sure you're doing it. Don't just add information to your proposal that you're not actually acting on. In addition to using your current funding to leverage additional funding from new foundations or funders, you can also leverage your funds to get new partnerships with other nonprofits such as yourself. So I have an example of this. I work with the organization who was applying for a grant, and the organization worked they worked solely with adults. The opportunity they were applying for related to programming surrounding families. So They needed to partner with someone or see if someone's available to partner with them to provide services for children. So the organization I worked with reached out to another organization who provided services to children. And, when they were having those conversations, the organization I worked with was able to share, we've worked on, this project, that project, we received funding from this funder, and we would love to partner with you to apply for this new project that relates to family services. Now, you don't have to go into the details of exactly how much money you have or what have you, but the fact that you've got money in the past for your project or program shows that nonprofit that you're approaching that, hey, this organization has some experience with obtaining grant funding and keeping their grant funding, and they've gotten multiple, grants for this program. Hey, maybe this is someone we should partner with. So that's all I mean. Just use your current or past grant opportunities as leverage to approach other nonprofits in the event that you identify that there's a program or project that the two of you can partner on. So we're down to our last piece of advice for today. Watch for red flags and stay strategic. And what I mean by that, think about it. If there's a well-known funder in your community or in your service area that always provides funding to this one nonprofit and they never provide funding to anyone else, that's going to raise some red flags. And in the event that you're that nonprofit that's getting the money, it's a good thing for you, but other nonprofits are going to question, well, what's so special about them, or what's the connection? Why are they the only nonprofits getting funded? If that's you, always stay ahead of the game and make sure, because like I mentioned before, in the event that funder has to pivot and is providing funding to under another priority or is giving it to another nonprofit, you want to make sure you're covered, your nonprofit and your program is covered with another funding source. So the second part of that is that if you are reapplying and getting the same grant year after year after year, make sure with any subsequent applications that you're providing evidence and proof that you're innovative and that your program is actually effective. You want to make your argument so strong that it's hard for that funder to say no. And the best case scenario for this one is if you're the only one that's providing the service in your community. Yes, it'll be easier to say yes to you because you're the only one doing it, but eventually there will be other nonprofits that pop up. So you always want to make sure that you are the most effective and the most innovative, so it makes it hard for that funder to say no to you and your program. Okay, so let's wrap up today's video. Number 1, don't rely solely on one funder. You never know what the future holds and things change. 2, think ahead and always have your next grant application lined up to be submitted. 3, use your first grant to show that you can get the results that you promised and use that to attract more funding from other funders. And finally, stay strategic and watch for red flags of overdependence, either of you or of other nonprofits. Your first grant is not the finish line. It's just a launch pad for you. Take what you've learned today and map out your next 3 to 5 grant opportunities. Get ready and start researching now. That's all I have for you today. But if you found this information helpful, make sure to drop a comment below, and you can click on the link below if you want to join the Lotus 9 community email list. This is where I share weekly tips to help you and your nonprofit get stronger funder relationships faster. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to today's video. And don't forget, you already have the passion and the vision. The only thing left for you to do is position your nonprofit so funders can see it too. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.